they didn't know how to call that game. Both teams played awfully. It was bad.
Well, that early lead by Baylor took the crowd out. Oh, there was no crowd to take out of it.
And there was no You know, WrestleMania is going to be in front of fans on Saturday and Sunday. It's going to be weird. Here we go. Let us to be sharing. All right, I got that.
Someone somewhere made an error.
What'd you do?
About something. Wait a minute.
That reminds me of that bit you did when David was a teenager. Where you been? Places, with, people, doing things.
No, stuff.
Stuff? Was it stuff?
Well, it's always what were we doing? Stuff with people. Where? In places.
Dude, that was so good.
Okay. Look, I can get hit in the head with the ball. Look.
That's right. It's right on your head.
I guess the first thing we have to talk about is how Aaron Rodgers got sandbagged on Jeopardy. That was not fair. That was not fair. You've seen the clip, haven't you?
Yeah, I have.
I mean, did they do that to Dr. Oz? No.
No.
Did they do that to Katie Couric? No.
No.
Did they do that to Ken Jennings? No.
They did not.
But I guess if you're a white male, forget Ken Jennings. He's a white male. If you're a white male,
you're open. It's open game. They're the most unfairly treated people in the world, really.
They are. They really are. All right, ready?
Ready.
The Brad and Britt cast is now live in the 1:30 hour here in the East. And for you podcast folks later on, it's as fresh as a brand new loaf of bread that you just bought and you take it home. And is there a better smell in the world than opening that? It's the best.
It's wonderful. It's the best.
It's the best. You know, Britt, many years before you and I worked together, I worked with a guy in Boston and Washington and New York named Mike Morin. And Mike was addicted to one smell. He had his favorite smell. I said, what is that? He said, bus fumes. I said, what is that all about? He says, I don't know. when I was a kid and the bus would go by, I liked the way the bus fumes smelled. I've never forgotten that, but I've never been able to myself be attracted to bus fumes, which, by the way, was a #1 hit back in the 1940s. Well, anyway, did I deviate this morning here?
Just a
this
little.
afternoon?
When I think of the smell of fresh bread, that's what you get when you walk into a Subway most of the time, right? Eat fresh. They have that delicious aroma of the fresh baking bread there.
Now, is their bread real? Because did you see the piece a few weeks ago where they took the so-called meat to a lab and found the turkey wasn't turkey.
Oh no,
the salami wasn't like nothing is real in a Subway sandwich. So I'm even questioning the bread.
Well, you might be right about that. I wouldn't bet my life on it. That's for sure.
Yeah. So hey, let's start off with the best news that April 19th is the day that everybody over 16 all over the country, there's no doubt about it, certainly where we are, will be able to roll up their sleeve and get themselves one of them their fancy schmancy vaccines. And that's a lot faster than we all thought it would ever happen. And it's a great thing. Then on the other side, we still have the resistance. We still have people who don't want to join in. They want to be the free riders. I'm not ever going to get one. Not interested in it. It doesn't affect me. I haven't gotten it. What am I worried about? It's no worse than the cold. I don't get the flu vaccine either. We should play a game back and forth. Excuses not to get the vaccine, but we won't, because that would be tedious and it'd be very Jimmy Fallon-like, wouldn't it? Don't you hate the way he plays games with every guest? When was that a decision that was made?
When was that a decision? But he's #1, so I mean, what are we to question? I think it's goofy as hell, but he's the guy. So
since when was he #1?
I thought he's the #1 guy in late night, Jimmy. I thought that was him. Isn't the Tonight Show #1?
Oh my God!
No,
Rich, can we start the podcast over?
Okay, who's #1 then?
Stephen Colbert has been #1 for so many years now.
Good.
Jimmy Fallon is practically begging to not get fired. That's how far down.
Pardon me for thinking that sort of bullshit would work on the American people the way that Jay Leno's bullshit worked for more than 20 years. Pardon me for thinking that the lowest common denominator. I'm glad it's not, but pardon me for thinking that the Jay Leno motto of doing like the hackiest bullshit and having it work and be #1 would be something that would continue to work. But I'm happy it's not. I don't know who made that decision. I think it's dreadful. And I've never thought that Jimmy Fallon was funny, even from the days on Saturday Night Live when he would fuck up every sketch by laughing. And everybody thought it was so cute, but it wasn't. It was stupid. And I never thought they were like, oh, he's obviously going to be a great. No, he's never been a great late night host. He's never been anything.
All right. Now I got you back on the team. But see, he is not. No. Colbert, the best thing that happened to Stephen Colbert, including the fact that 6 months after he got in, they fired the showrunner, and that was kind of him. He stopped being that guy, and they hired a guy. I can't remember who it is. A brilliant guy who helped redirect everything. And Colbert got it together. And then once Trump got in there, it's only been uphill for Stephen Colbert. But
only since
Trump's are you kidding?
Since Trump's been gone, it's been terrible for Stephen Colbert. He's not been able to do anything. Right. It's like us. We're just struggling so much with Donald Trump not able to kick that guy around anymore.
Hey, while we're playing games here, can we play a game? Let's play a game called Words That Get Used That They Think Everybody Really Understands, but a lot of people don't, especially the mouth breathers of America, which is probably the majority of America, right? Okay, these are the two words.
Mouth
Ready?
Breathers. Yeah.
Here they are. Filibuster and infrastructure. All right. Those words are used almost flippantly, as if everyone knows what they are. Right. I mean, what the fuck is a filibuster? I don't know. I don't know. Can I buy it? Is it on Amazon? Is it something that they do? It does. First of all, half the people who are in government, they don't know they don't really know. It's just there. Right. It's just a thing, right? And then infrastructure, that's the real piece of shit word. And now that's officially being fought over not just because a lot of people don't know what it means, but because, of course, the Republicans are trying to narrow that word down to what it surely meant back in 1910, which was roads, bridges, and tunnels.
If it's not
And
those
maybe,
three things,
maybe rivers, fixing a dike or a dam. That's it.
but if it's not
but
any of that,
anything else,
it doesn't count. Like if you're
and by the
doing
way,
the electrical grid, the country's grid, that doesn't count. That's not infrastructure.
Nope. Well, Britt, when the Republicans are in charge, they understand that just fine. But now, never underestimate Republicans' ability to misunderstand something that they want to misunderstand on purpose to try to start an argument. So, the idea of broadband for America to get the, I don't know, what is it, 30% of homes don't have access to it. It's a lot.
Right. That doesn't count. That does
not count. Does not mean anything. If you don't live in a metropolitan area where it's fairly easy to get it, well, fuck you. But wait a minute. Wouldn't that be the Republican base that's out in those places that are far away from where broadband might be easily? Oh, wait, Britt, are you telling me that Republicans would actually do things that would insult and demean their very own voting base
and punish
yeah, and get away with it and be told by them they're doing the right thing? Can I vote for you twice? You're that good because you're owning the libs by being against what
owning the libs by kicking my ass. That's what you're doing. Yeah, no, that's absolutely 100%. And maybe if they just called it, if Joe Biden just called the program helping the folks in the sticks, then Republicans would be like, oh, wait, hang on, we might be able to get on board with that. That might be something we can actually do.
That would not help, Britt. Britt, it's not about helping people.
Oh, darn it!
Republicans' cruelty is the policy.
Owning the lib. If he called it owning the libs, like if he just called the infrastructure bill owning the libs, then the Republicans might get on board. Like, wait, hang on a second. How much do we need for that? We can find some money for that for sure.
Yeah. Republicans think that infrastructure is equivalent to what you thought it might be when you're 6 years old and you get things like Lincoln Logs and Legos and other building toys because you're making stuff with your hands, and anything beyond that, anything new, any other technologies beyond that, well, that's just liberal wish list kind of stuff. They've been trying to do that for years. The idea that you would build up and I'm going to use this, the human infrastructure of the country. Wow. Well, that certainly doesn't count. That's a made up phrase by me right now.
That's right.
In other words,
I like it though.
To make sure that elderly people have access to good care in their later years by making sure our nursing homes are up to snuff and people get paid more and the facility that couldn't possibly be considered infrastructure. That's just crazy shit, right?
That's nuts. That's out of control.
Right.
And the idea that the internet would be considered infrastructure is just nuts. I mean, when has that ever created any kind of a job or anything? That's just
Never.
Stupid. Why would you ever say anything
one.
like that? It's ridiculous. When has it ever educated one child? I mean, come on. You got to be more clever about this stuff if you're going to say these things. Right. The railing by the Republican Party against people who are supporting or standing up, I should say, to Georgia's voter suppression laws. Now, they're on fire here. Yesterday, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell warned of unspecified serious consequences if corporations and other parts of the private sector kept dabbling in behavior like a woke parallel government. Later in the day, McConnell told big business to stay out of politics. I think he later clarified to say, you can still write the checks. We still want you to write big-ass checks, but please stay out of politics. That is the message from Mitch McConnell, who is throwing a real brushback pitch, baseball terminology, to big business, Brad, as companies like Delta and Coca-Cola have supported Major League Baseball's action to move the All-Star game out of Atlanta. I believe it's now going to be in Denver, is where they've decided they're going to put the Major League Baseball All-Star game. Mitch McConnell really showing those corporate overlords who's boss, right?
All right, you ready? Sit back. I'm ready.
I thought I set you up pretty well on that.
Yeah. First of all, the intertwining of politics and sports didn't just start 2 weeks ago when Georgia passed their voter suppression bill. All right. It did not start then. I know this is breaking news. This is breaking news. But it's been that way since day one of Major League Baseball. You could argue, because remember, one of the most famous books ever written about the game was called Only the Ball Was White. Remember that? Remember that title?
Right.
It's a big one. It's an important game. All right. So just from a discrimination standpoint, baseball has spent the last 100 and some years woking up. Is that a word? Woking up?
Woking up.
Slowly, but surely. And my take is that this moment must be handled gently. Jeff Greenfield, I posted this, wrote a piece in Politico saying he thinks, and Jeff Greenfield's a liberal, he's a Bobby Kennedy liberal, okay? He thinks it was not the smartest thing for baseball to move the game, because they could have taken the 3 days and turned it kind of into an awareness festival in Atlanta, right in the center of all this, to let people know about voting rights and turn it into that kind of thing, a real positive thing.
You can register
and on
people
the surface,
and stuff,
engage people, right? The whole thing. And Hank Aaron's memory and Atlanta and the rest. I mean, I get that, except American history teaches us that only bold action gets results.
Mm-hmm.
That would not be bold to hold a 3-day festival with people eating hot dogs and drinking beer on the streets around downtown Atlanta, and the game is up there in the ring county. It was a Cobb County.
Cobb County is where they moved.
Right. The stadium isn't even in Atlanta. And it kind of sounds good, and I don't think it would have gotten the job done. This gets the job done. This gets everyone's attention. And don't worry, you can look at it from 30,000 feet and say, okay, all the money that isn't going to be transacted in Atlanta for the 3 days, as if that's going to be the end of the fucking world for Georgia and Atlanta if they don't have the baseball all-star game there this year. Okay.
Right.
And by the way, Charlotte survived not having the NBA all-star game there one year. They had it a few years later. And Atlanta, I'm sure, will have a game. They might even have it next year. Who knows what happens? It could come back. But that's not money that's gone forever. And people's lives were not all set up for the last 5 years in Georgia about all-star weekend. But I think you have to take the bold step. This is the bold step, and it's pushed not by the commissioner, that Augusta membership holding commissioner Rob Manfred at the Masters and the country club there. Yeah, it was clearly the players saying that they didn't want the game in Atlanta. Okay, that's issue one. Issue two is that already the game that's being played by Republicans and conservatives and racists, throw them all into one pot, I guess it's the same description, is that, have you actually read the bill? If you look at it, we're going to have more days of early voting instead of, we have 17 instead of 15. And, Joe Biden lied. Joe Biden said they closed the polls at 5. That's not true. It's 7. And of course, they're trying to kill him on that. That's proof that Joe Biden is a bigger liar than Donald Trump was in all 4 years. You can play the whataboutism
clearly.
Game. But the fact is, the bill says, I believe the law says, that in general, the polls should close at 5, but your county has the option to keep them open until 7. That sounds pretty wiggly to me. That sounds pretty slimy.
Well, there's a lot of stuff, including the drop boxes in Atlanta going from 94 to like 23, and they're not going to be open 24 hours. But the scariest part of all that is, and I think you alluded to this yesterday, was where the state could come in and just take over control of the locals anytime they want to if they think things look a little hinky.
Right.
But there's no real criteria.
Brian Bull Connor Kemp, of course, went on Fox on Tuesday morning and wanted everyone to know that, okay, they're going to take the damn game and put it in Colorado, and they're worse than we are. We have more early voting days than Colorado does.
Right.
What is up with that? They have a form of voter ID. They're as bad as we are.
Oh, wow.
No, they're as great as we are. No, here's the point. Point is, every state in this country has voting restrictions. They all do. It's just a question of degree. And they really like to use New York. And you won't hear me. I don't think you'll hear anybody defend the voting laws of New York. Fuck. It wasn't until 2019, not during the pandemic, but the year before, that the New York legislature finally got around to doing something called early voting. They didn't have it in New York. They did not have it at all in New York. So Brian Kemp and the rest of them, they're saying, well, look at New York. Why are you picking on us? And here's the simple answer, at least from my point of view. The simple answer is that because you made these changes at the drop of a hat, at the bequest of Donald Trump only, and because you think people felt the election wasn't fair and something, quote, needed to be done. Well, what needed to be done? The rules needed to be changed here and there. We'll throw you a bone here, but we'll take 5 bones away here, and we'll brag about the 1 bone we're throwing you. But look at the other hand that I've got hidden. You're not going to notice that. And there's just no way that there was a call for an immediate change in the middle of the night on a bill that was signed into law in a private ceremony behind closed, locked doors with no members of the press there to record it. Actually, just one still photo I think we've seen of that, where they're sitting in front of that picture of the plantation. But there was no public ceremony, no public celebration of this. Wonder why? I wonder why. Because this is about slipping through bullshit. That's what this is. This is about slipping through bullshit. I'm willing to have a discussion about all other 49 states, all the other problems. But you put the target on your own back, Georgia. You did it. And just because Democrats in Georgia and Stacey Abrams got their shit together and were able to mobilize more voters to come out and vote on Election Day, and then in the special election on January 5th to elect 2 Democratic senators for the first time since the rule of Caesar. You're changing the rules right now. You're doing it instantly. And you got to be more subtle in your sliminess. But that's not how Republicans operate these days. They're following the Trump example. They're going to be corrupt. They're going to be dishonest. They're going to steal shit from you. They're going to fuck you over, and they're going to tell you about it, and they're going to challenge you to try to do anything about it. And if you don't, they win. And so the only way they don't win is to take that game away. And the state will get over it. They will live through it. But I think as a talking point for Republicans, yeah, just add this to War on Christmas and Dr. Seuss and the rest. It's there. I get it. But sometimes you just have to do the right thing. I think this is the right thing. I think Jeff Greenfield's wrong that there should have been a 3-day festival of voting rights in Georgia that weekend. That would have been covered for about 2 minutes on the news. Yeah, and that would have been it. Right. It's
interesting you should say that, because it is almost 5 years ago to the day that all this stuff started in North Carolina over Pat McCrory signing that bill into law that said you had to use the bathroom that corresponds with what you were assigned at birth. And that was something that was very effective against North Carolina. I think the final total was something around $4 billion in business that North Carolina lost because of that whole situation.
It's not just that. If anything less had been done, if there was no boycott, if businesses just said, oh, okay, if Bruce Springsteen said, I'm going to come here and I'm going to play and I'm going to talk about voters' rights, and we're going to have some booths set up outside of the concert to register people to vote and all that kind of, the feel good plastic banana shit, okay, to borrow from a good old friend of ours.
Let the guy die. Just let him die.
Limbaugh used to say, what was his phrase? How did he say it?
Yeah, plastic banana, feel good, rock and roll. It was something like that. I can't remember. It was like so stupid. It was so ridiculous. But he and of course the idiots. Oh God, it's so funny. I love it. It's like,
by the way, I just want you to know, I have not ridden on a public bus in Montgomery, Alabama, since 1955, when Rosa Parks started that boycott. I followed that. It's hurt.
That showed him. No, but it was a very successful action against North Carolina. I remember PayPal was going to put a big payment center in Charlotte, and they were like, peace out, we're done. And not only was it Springsteen, but it was also Pearl Jam. But then you had people like Louis C.K. Back when he was somebody, he booked a couple of big comedy shows at the Greensboro Coliseum, and all that money went to, like, I think it was to transgender kids or to LGBTQ kids and try to help them out and stuff like that. So there was some of that action, but overall, the boycott action, that is pointed to, particularly by folks on the left, as being something where, yeah, you can affect a change. You can definitely affect a change, and it changed things in North Carolina, thank God, because people took a stand and decided to pull out and do certain things like Springsteen and Pearl Jam and PayPal and all those other guys.
Right.
I thought it's been 5 years.
Right. Now this thing with baseball, it's bigger on a national scale than the bathroom bill was in North Carolina. The bathroom bill in North Carolina was a pretty big deal. I mean, it had a national flavor to it too. But because this is centered at the beginning here on baseball, followed by, every blue chip company you can name, I think this is going to turn out to be more of a big deal. And the North Carolina action 5 years ago was in its own way somewhat isolated from other kinds of movements at the time. The baseball is right in the middle of all this, and there was no Trump then. Okay. Was he president during HB2? I can't remember. We'd have to look. It
was 2016, so he had not taken office. It was before the election. So yeah, it was April of 2016 is when all of this shit went down, because I was supposed to see Pearl Jam April the 20th of 2016 at the RBC Center in Raleigh, and that never happened. That's the show that never took place.
Oh, so he was probably just mouthing off about it as a candidate.
I'm sure that's exactly what he was doing, and about the awful left and all of this stuff. The problem also with the Georgia bill, and as far as making sure that the integrity, remember, this is all about the integrity of the election, is that Raffensperger spent a couple of months talking about how this Georgia election was the greatest thing ever. It was the most secure. It was the most safe. There was no integrity problem. They knew exactly how many dead people had voted. It was 2. He spent time and time again telling Donald Trump that there was no problem with it. So if there's no problem, why do we have to enact all this shit?
I'm sorry, Britt, but you are a hypocrite. 2 people is too many. Two people is too many. And if we can prevent those next 2 people from ever trying that again,
right?
Of course, your point is irrefutable and shouldn't be argued with at all. But of course, that does not matter, because this is about trying to score points, put points up on the board for your team, especially when you have no infrastructure plan of your own, you have no healthcare plan of your own. You have nothing to do except say no. You're an opposition party, and your goal is to, like with Barack Obama, to make Joe Biden a one-term president. That's all they're going to do. They're just going to say no. So the good news is that on Monday night, the parliamentarian of the Senate ruled that they can move some more legislation with just 50+1 votes instead of having to get the 60 votes. So now this infrastructure legislation is going to be more of an argument between Democrats, not between Democrats and Republicans, because they're not going to get any Republican votes. They're never going to get any. Let's acknowledge it. So now it's just about making sure that you've made people like Joe Manchin and Kristen Sinema of Arizona and Mark Warner of Virginia. You can move down the extremely liberal scale back up towards the moderate and towards the conservative Democrat side, and you get those people there at the end who have to be brought on board. And what's going to happen is that there will be changes that are going to be made probably in the legislation a little bit, but it's not going to be what did you see the number that was thrown out over the weekend by the Republicans? Because the question, okay, so if $2 trillion is not the right size, Republicans, what is the right size? And their answer, I think this is Roy Blunt, retiring piece of shit from Missouri, who's never done anything. Can you think of one thing that guy's ever done while he was? No. Okay, they named that famous blunt after him, right? When you smoke a blunt,
when you smoke some weed, yeah, that's right.
Right. But other than that, he's
invented it.
Useless.
Yeah,
he invented that. Okay.
Sorry.
No idea what I was saying. What was I saying?
You were saying something.
The size of the okay. So
yeah.
Blunt on one of the shows says 600 billion. Okay, in other words, less than a third of the size that Biden and the Democrats, most of them, are proposing. And of course, then they start to first of all, only about 7% of the bill is about infrastructure, which is just a lie. Under the least generous description of it, you could say, all right, only 30% is the roads, bridges, classic, 1910 version of it.
Right.
But then there are all these other things. So you have guys like Joe Manchin and Kirsten Sinema, who are blue senators in red states, okay, who are word. And Manchin, of course, he's in the reddest fucking state in the world, and he's a Democrat. So he doesn't even have to pretend to suck up to the liberals in Virginia, all 9 of them. Okay,
right.
It doesn't matter. They're going to be with him no matter what. So he's got to get all those Trump voters who keep voting for him every 6 years. They've been putting him back in there. He can't go too far left. That's his calculation, like it or not. So Manchin, very often at the end of these kinds of negotiations, gets very clever and very smart, and he figures out the right thing to agree to, and he sells it back home, and it works. And this is what happened with the rescue plan, a month or 5 weeks ago. He did it then. But by the way, if I recall, the rescue plan, when the Republicans were asked, okay, well, what's yours? Because this one was $2 trillion, right?
Yeah.
The last time where we all got
it's not yours. It's not yours.
Right. But their response then, I think, was also like 600 billion. It was also like a third of the size. So they are obsessed. They are obsessed with that 1/3 thing. The 2/3 of what Democrats propose is always wish list, useless. We've wanted this for years. We want babysitters for every kid in America. Kind of. We don't need that shit. Come on, grow up. But when that happens, you're going to get that rescue plan. And on the far left of the Democrats, they're saying that the $2 trillion, of course, is not enough.
It's not enough.
And it's not going to get bigger. We know it's not going to get bigger. And all of those left, from Bernie Sanders in the Senate to AOC and the rest of them, and they're on board. They're saying that. They have to say that. That's not a problem.
That's exactly right. Honestly, a year from now, we're going to be talking about midterms because it's going to be here before you know it. And the president's party typically loses seats in Congress in the midterms. It almost always happens. It's just a thing. If the Democrats can't make the argument that we're the company, we're the party that actually does shit for the country, build bridges, try to get broadband out to the sticks. If they can't make that argument, and meanwhile the Republican Party is the party that's trying to save fucking Pepe Le Pew, how are the Democrats not able to make that argument next year?
because
it's the first,
people vote more about Pepe Le Pew than they do about infrastructure.
Then we're doomed. Do. It's over. Forget it.
I'm not saying we're doomed. I'm not saying that it's over. But in the short term, that stuff has worked for Republicans. It really, really has. And they are going to have that. We can see it coming a mile away. We know it's coming, and they live for this stuff. I don't know if you saw the piece in the Times. This political scientist from University of Chicago went and surveyed, I think it's 300 of the people that got arrested, or got the survey on them, and only 10% of them were hardcore Oath Keeper members of the fucked up seditionist caucus. The other people who were arrested are people who are largely from counties in the country that express the view in general, because of the way they vote. They're part of we're white people and they're taking it away from us, and we have to do something. Mm-hmm. That's what attacked the Capitol for the most part on January 6th. We're not going to take it anymore. There are too many of them that aren't like us, don't look like us, don't pray like us. And they're turning this country into something I don't recognize, and we must take it back now. And of course, the avatar of taking our country back is Donald Trump. Let's overthrow the Congress and install Donald Trump, like Putin, who, by the way, again, he just made Donald Trump look so bad the other day. Did you see? He just got the Russian parliament to pass a law saying he can remain president now until the year. You ready? You want to play high-low on this? How long he gets to stay in? Go ahead.
This is 2021. I will say 2040.
You're a little high. Only 2035.
Oh, wow. Well, he's a very magnanimous man.
Right. Now, and he's in his, I think he's in his mid-60s. So right. He's basically got himself penciled in there as president for life. And remember that interview that Trump did where they asked him about Putin, and he indicated strong leader? Weird shit like that.
They would do that all the time.
Thing.
It wasn't just him. It was like half of Fox News talked about how studly Vladimir Putin was.
Well, and by the way, that carried over, of course, to the Republican Party, the fealty to Putin, the high ratings that Putin had, comparatively speaking, before and after. And here it is, president for life. And Donald Trump is sitting down there rearranging the furniture at Mar-a-Lago. Did you see that picture? Did you see that picture of him sitting there with Stephen Miller, boy Nazi? And this is total little boy shit. You get tossed out of office, you lose the election. So what do? You go somewhere and you make up your personal office to look like the Oval Office. He has those things behind him, those little symbols behind him. Right. And you get a representation of the Resolute desk, which, by the way, that needs to be checked. He may have stolen the real one and given Biden a fake. I wouldn't put it past him. That needs to be checked immediately. But attempted to be hidden on the desk was a bottle of Diet Coke on the same day that Trump, of course, is calling for a boycott of Coca-Cola.
And this jives with his behavior, because we know from that article about him being served the Coke, he likes it out of a bottle. That's how he likes his Diet Coke. It was in that thing in the New Yorker at his stupid hotel in D.C. There was a 7 or 8 part system for fucking serving him a Diet Coke at a hotel.
Do you think he even has a red button installed on this fake desk to have some butler run in there and give him
the waiter was supposed to come out with white gloves on, present him the Diet Coke, not touch anywhere near the top of it. He would have an opener halfway. He would hit 2/3 of the way down the opener is where you're supposed to put your hand. You would uncork it, you would then pour it, and you would put it next to him with ice. You would always have to have that. That would always have, there was like a 7 or 8 part list of things they had to follow in order to get Diet Coke. So yes, as he's telling people to boycott Coca-Cola products, there he is with the stupid Diet Coke on his desk right there. And I think he's the one that actually made the statement one time that the only people who drink Diet Coke are fat. I think Donald Trump actually said that. And I don't know if he actually understands the whole
so finally
irony.
he didn't lie about something. He didn't lie about something. Yes.
And what I have to say about those people who aren't necessarily Proud Boys members or stuff, who still have problems with, they taking over my country, it doesn't matter if you're going to carry those beliefs and then act on them. You don't have to go to a Proud Boys meeting, wear the T-shirt, cater the meals. You're just as bad as they are. You don't have to necessarily associate yourself and pay the dues. If you're going to carry out their ideals and then feel like it's okay to get swept along on January the 6th to attack the Capitol, then you might as well be a Proud Boy. It's just a matter of semantics at that point, isn't it?
Yeah. Here's the piece. It's Robert Pape of University of Chicago. 10% members of established far right organizations. Blah blah blah. But other analysts who have made similar findings. This one's a little bit different. His argument is that the remaining 90% of the ordinary rioters are part of a still congealing mass movement on the right that's shown itself willing to, quote, put violence at its core. And this, of course, has a storied history in this country. 1840s and 1850s, the Know Nothing Party, those were the Protestants who'd lived in the United States since its founding, who were pissed off at the Irish Catholics. No Irish need apply. That's when that all started. Then in World War I, and right afterwards, here comes the Ku Klux Klan because of the goddamn Italians. The Italians are wrecking the country. And then when black people started moving north, well, what followed them north? The Klan. Okay, because I always heard that Indiana was the #1 Klan state.
I think that's right. I believe that's where the Klan was. Wasn't the Klan founded in Indiana?
No, I think it was in Tennessee.
I
think it was definitely.
Oh, was that Nathan?
Don't take that away from Tennessee, you son of a bitch! Come on, the SEC rules. Come on, the Big Ten sucks. The Big Ten sucks. Come on, SEC rules.
Yeah, Pulaski, Tennessee. That is correct. I'm sorry, Tennessee. You are the volunteer state when it comes to volunteer racism. Good job.
And of course, the difference that the professor from University of Chicago, Mr. Pape, points out is that this time around, this movement is being led by a then president of the United States. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
And to me, that changes everything. I mean, you can name whoever was the president at the time in the past during those other eras. And none of them, even if Woodrow Wilson was a racist, okay, none of them gave full public support and comfort to those kinds of movements. They just didn't. You just would not do that. So we really are in a different world, and maybe when they look back in 100 or 200 years, they're going to look at the election of 2016 as that moment when the country tipped and the worst instincts of people that had appeared in various forms during various eras in the past, they would come and they would make their mark, and then whatever minority group would become assimilated, they'd become part of the country, and we would move on. We would stumble on. We would get to the next spot. And in the case of the Italians and the Irish, my God, you think about World War II, when people got mixed together in our military and fought the Nazis, and black people were there too, and inadvertently the military kind of helps things along in that area in terms of assimilation. This is just me just freelancing here.
Well, I believe that was a sticking point for Mr. Strom Thurmond, that Harry Truman had integrated our armed services.
Exactly.
I think he was unhappy about that.
Right. So, in history, who was right about that? It wasn't Strom Thurmond. Okay. So it's very difficult to digest what is going on right now and think that coming out on the other side, we may be better, because it feels right now that they're better organized, they're more militant, they're more pervasive, and they know tactics that are far beyond what we've seen in these past movements, and they're everywhere, and they're nebulous, and they're hard to find. And, every moment you can look down at your phone and worry that there's going to be a notification that there's been another attack on the U.S. Capitol.
Right.
It could happen. But we don't know. And you want to think that there's good intelligence on this. They're paying closer attention now, certainly than they were leading up to January 6th. But we don't know, because now they have the technology to communicate with each other through these private networks. And I don't know if they're able to be broken down. I don't know. You don't know. I don't know.
Well, that's one of the things that's so pernicious and so pervasive about these Proud Boys and folks like that, is that they're able to co-opt those people. I mean, they're like, I'm not as hardcore as those guys. I'm about 20% there. But when you get them into a crowd like they did on January the 6th, they're able to kind of sweep them right along. They're able to do that pretty easily. There's, by the way, we're showing to the people who are watching live, there's the picture you were talking about of the pseudo Oval Office that Donald Trump has created at Mar-a-Lago. There's the picture right there with Donald John Trump and Stephen Miller and the military stuff that's off to Miller's. I guess that would be his right. And it does look
on the right side of the desk, Trump's left, our right. You can see that bottle of Coke right behind the phone.
I'm going to use my cursor to point to it right there. There's the Diet Coke hiding behind the phone, even as he's telling good Republicans they need to boycott Coke products because they're getting too uppity. I guess Coke is getting too uppity. Is that basically the Republican theme here?
Yeah.
Coca-Cola is getting way too uppity, pal.
Yeah. No. The problem with that whole idea, shut up and drink Coke, shut up and fly planes, Delta,
shut up and
shut up and sell hammers, Home Depot,
right?
Shut up and deliver packages, UPS. You have nothing to say about politics. You can't even find a barrel big enough to hold the hypocrisy in thinking that on these issues, on this issue, at this moment in time in the evolution of the country, that corporate America, which by law, by Supreme Court ruling, has been given more personhood than they ever had in the past. Corporations are people too, as Mitt Romney once famously said during a campaign.
And Mitch McConnell's basically saying, we like your money, but shut the fuck up. That's essentially the Mitch McConnell addendum.
Right. But the problem is, this isn't one guy in a bakery in Colorado not baking a cake. These are multinational companies, and they have hundreds of thousands of employees, every one of them. And those companies have a large percentage of people who are minority, who are Black. But even if they didn't, you would hope they would still feel the same way about it. But because they are so far ahead in having a diverse workforce, it changes the rules. Coca-Cola, for instance, 50 years ago, who knows how many Black employees they had back then? But this is a different era. And the fact that they are headquartered in Atlanta, it means everything. It changes the game. And how dare you say to them, you have no right to talk about anything. You have no right to have a political opinion. So that's absurd. It is just plainly absurd. And
I suppose they're going to be even more upset now that the head coach of the University of North Carolina basketball team is a Black guy. That could be very upsetting to a lot of people.
Well, I haven't heard any of that.
Oh, you haven't heard any of that?
No, I've not heard any racism yet.
You get ready for the Smith Center to be stormed, pal. It's going to happen at some point. They're upset about it.
I'll tell you what. He sounds like a pretty good candidate. I think though, the fact that they hired Hubert Davis almost instantly.
Yeah.
And we don't know whether, he knew this was going to happen, whether this was all set up ahead of time. It could have been. It might have been that way. Yeah. But it just feels that maybe at this moment that UNC could have cast a little bit of a wider net and gone. The question is it automatically the safe choice to pick someone primarily because they were a player for Dean Smith and because they've been sitting on the other end of the bench for 8 years? I mean, is that the number one priority?
Yeah, it's the in the family argument. I mean, I hate the in the family argument, but if he beats Duke a couple of times, I'm going to love the in the family argument.
But there is no family when you're out on the floor trying to play defense. It means nothing. It's a
Do you know how old that guy
is?
It's
a romantic concept of bullshit. And you know who learned that later on? Like the Boston Celtics finally figured out that they had to stop hiring ex-Celtics play. Tom Heinsohn was the coach. Casey Jones was the coach. They were both pretty good coaches, but who knows if they couldn't have done better. I mean, at a certain point, you have to operate in the real world. Are we to believe that when Mike Krzyzewski retires, by definition, it has to be someone who is a Duke graduate who played for him? Is that automatically just a given?
The palace intrigue there has always been very interesting, but yeah, we got to keep it in the family. It's very important to keep it in the family, which I've always loved, because
that's the fucking mafia. No, that's the mafia that does that. That's the Trump family that keeps that. The Trump family keeps it in the family because no one else can be trusted because they're such dishonest pieces of shit.
You know who was in the family? Matt Doherty. That turned out really well, didn't it?
Right.
I mean, come on, give me a break with this shit. But again, like I said, if the guy ends up winning 30 games next year and he goes to the Final Four, then
absolutely,
it'll be the greatest choice ever. I don't have any issue.
If he wins, it's the right choice. If he loses, it's the wrong choice. And of course, I believe that he should get 1 year. If he can't win it next year, one and done. Right?
That's it. You're done. Get out of there.
What is that? Yeah, how long do you have? It's crazy.
I think it'll be more than a year.
Yeah.
And how does he stand on Pepe? How does he stand on Pepe Le Pew? That's the important thing.
Yeah. How does he? All right. Plenty of damage done today. Plenty of damage. We're going to have to be fighting off 10 lawsuits after today, don't you think?
I hope so. See you Wednesday.